Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Nedarim Daf Chaf Beis. We are going to begin on Chaf Beis Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. So we were discussing when it comes to a Chacham whether or not we say Poschin B'charata. So we saw it was actually a Machlokas, but according to Rav Asi, we said that a Chacham is not allowed to begin or is not able to nullify a neder through charata, through regret, because it doesn't indicate a mistake in the neder's formation. Only it shows that he actually did want the neder at the time, and only later he wanted it to be removed. Now, as I said, this is a machlokus because there is an opinion, or numerous opinions actually, that 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 a chacham is allowed to be poisech b'charata. However, that's only b'charata de mikara, that he regrets the neder as it was made, maybe in haste. But if it was a charata de hashta, that really he never had any charata, he only just doesn't want it from now on, then that much even they don't say. Okay. So with that said, let's continue with the Gemara. Bartid Rabbi Yanai Saba also kamei de Rabbi Yanai Saba. So they went and presented themselves. Amarle, and so they said, Ilu habi yadat. So he was saying to her, if you would have known the paschin pinkasach, that it's going to be opened up in a ledger by Hashem in the Beis Din Shomala, mashmishin ba'avodoch, and your actions are going to be basically recorded that you are a person that makes Nedarim, which clearly shows that Nedarim should not be made. Min the dart, would you have made such a neder? Amalei lo. So she said no. So v'shari. So you mocked it. So look in the Ran. Shemitoich shehu noider nira shehu machzik atzmo kachosid. You're actually acting like you're a chosid. Shul yichashel benidra, that you don't make mistakes. Mitok kach min hashamayim poischen pinchas suchuyosav. So they say, oh wow, this guy must be a tzaddik. Let's check him out. Is this really someone who's so great? And all of a sudden, you're causing yourself to be judged. So it's interesting reason that's brought down in the Ran. That's what it means. So Amr Abba Mikra, what pasuk says the Ran? Koimer dahachihu kedi armeli Rav Yanai. How do we know this is actually true? Because the pasuk says v'achar nedarim levaker, that after neder, says the Ran, achar shenader adam mevakrin masav, Hashem starts looking at your actions. V'yafal gav the pasuk Rav Yanai le anan lo paschinan le. Even though he actually came up with this idea that this should work, but nonetheless we don't actually utilize this, as we'll see in a second. But before we do that, let's look at question 3. Ma pirish pasuk v'achar nedarim laboker v'im poischin l'noidim haikra. So it means again that after you make a neder, Hashem's going to start looking into your actions. However, we do not use this type of a Pesach, even though Rabbi Yanai did, and we'll see now why. So the Gemara says as follows: V'lo poischin anan loy paschinan lei baha v'lo paschinan bahada achran yasa. So he says, what you're saying with that one we don't, but maybe we. But not in another case. Not in another case. The Rabbi Barachana, Rabbi Yochanan, my Pasach lay Rabbi Gamliel lahu Saba. So what was the Pesach that he used for this person? So the pasuk says Yesh Baite Kemad Karais Charev, that a person's speech you'll be stabbed with a sword. But the language of the Chachamim will heal you. So what is that referring to? So the Gemara explains like this: Kol haboite, anyone who makes a neder, roy l'daikro b'cherev, you're fit that you should be stabbed with a sword. El loshen chachamim marape, but what it means that the seif of the pasuk, the chachamim can heal you. In other words, they could have your neder removed. Voy paschinan bahada achran yasa. So again, that's another situation where we do not use such a Pesach. The Sanya. Rav Nasan Omer Hanoider Kilu Bana Bama. It says that, let's say, did you know that if you made a neder, there would be kilo like bana bama, that you built a bama, the time of the no heter bamos, no isser bamos, the kaimai, and if you actually fulfill your neder, kilo makrav of carbon, that you actually are makrav this carbon on the bama. So bereisha paschinan. So the beginning is a paschinan, beseifa. B'seifa, the end. So what exactly is this talking about? So by oimer paschinan, Rabbi oimer loy paschinan. You're saying it's actually a machlokus whether or not we could use this as an opening. Rav Kahana masni lo hashmaisa b'hadei lishna. Rav tav yomi masni hachim b'seifa loy paschinan. I bereisha. By oimer paschinan, Rabbi oimer lo paschinan. Behilchasa lo paschinan lo bereisha lo b'seifa. The question again is, can you use? There's two statements. There's a Reish and the Seifa. Do we say you could use the Reish as a Pesach, saying you better not make a neder because it's like you built a bama, or the Seifa that if you did make a Makayim the neder, that it's like you were Makar carbon. So we say we don't use either of them. So let's look at Rashi. Let's look at the Ran rather. The Ran says as follows: Hanaider. So before we do that, the Achar Nedarim Levakir. So why don't we use that? Why don't we use these? So the Ran says, Yesh Lochish Shoimer Shemischaret Alfabi Shenu Mischaret. So let's say you use this and say, do you have charata? Because otherwise you're like a sinner, you've done all these things wrong. So a person is going to be embarrassed. It's a very interesting psychological var, that a person's going to say, oh no, yeah, I'm embarrassed. I would never do such a thing. I regret. It would be terrible to have such a sin. Maybe the guy really doesn't care, but because he doesn't want to look bad in front of everyone, so he'll say, yeah, you're right. I do have regret. That is enough reason to have a charata. So even though really he has no charata, he doesn't really care of all these different things, of all the detrimental outcomes and consequences of making a neder. So apparently that would mean again that it's better that you should not use these types of things in Pesach to be able to be mocked in the neder. And then the Ran says again b'shas isser bamois v'nira be'enai the hachi medaminen lo l'boine bama. Why? Mishum that salka daita, because you think the neder the mitzvah kavod. You're thinking, well, I'm doing a great thing. I'm making a neder. The Rachman Asrei b'mili the Isura. So the Torah asers some things. V'ihu nami aser nafshe. So the Torah says I can't eat pig. I'm also going to aser other things. So it must be I'm a great person. But ka'omer the toy. It's a mistake. The adarabba. L'boyne bama dami. It's like you're building a bama. The nihid Rachman Asrei lakruvi karbanos bifnim. It's true that the Torah says you can't bring karbanos. As hari shul haisef Allah livnois bama l'hakir b'chutz. Just because you can't bring a bum in bifnim, so you certainly can't bring a b'chutz either. Ki ma'isef, and you're considered to be a sinner, skipping a line. Poiskin lo dayach b'masha asur Torah el shata oiser lecha davar macherim. So it's interesting, this notion of these chumrah, that you think you're doing a chumrah by adding all these nedarim upon yourself. The truth is, it's not a good thing necessarily, all these additional chumras. Then the Ran says, Bereisha paschinan, the hanaider kilu bana bama, paschinan. So maybe that does work. You could use that as a Pesach. It's not such a huge sin. So it's interesting. Because it's not so bad building a bama, so therefore we could offer that, and therefore they could say, no, I don't care. A person wouldn't mind admitting that they don't care because it's not such a big affair of building a bama. However, the seifa, which is much more significant, so then you look really bad if you would just simply say, I don't care about that. And therefore, maybe that's the reason why we don't use that, the seifa. But maybe the reisha is acceptable. Okay, that's what we said. It doesn't matter. Reisha or seifa, we do not want to use these because if they say, don't you have charata? Because it's like you built a bama. a person can say, "Oh yeah, that's terrible," but the truth is that he may not really care, and therefore he didn't really have charata. So that's the whole issue. Therefore, we don't use these as a Pesach to remove the neder, not the ratio of the pasuk or the seifa. Vo paschinan, baha nami the Shmuel the Amr Shmuel avapi shemikaimo nikra rasha. That even if you're mekayim it, you're considered to be a rasha. So again, the problem with that is you're going to basically, you may say, well, that's so strong, it's so bad, I don't want to be called a rasha. The truth is, I don't really care. I just don't want people to think I don't care. So that's the problem why it may not work. Amrabavo Mikra, the Chisechta Lindor, if you stop, only when you stop, Lo Yebachachet, then you won't sin. Yov Chadol Chadol, Ksiv Hacha Ki Sechta Lindor, Ksiv Hasam Shomer Shaim Chadul Roiges. So again, we see that a person who makes a neder, they're considered to be sinners, or they're Rishayim, they're wicked. And therefore, because of that, it's questionable whether or not such a Pesach is allowed to be used. If a person says that I'm making, and this we saw before in Daf Tes, if a person says, I'm making a neder just like a kosher, lomer klum. And the reason is because, as we said, a kosher is not going to make a neder. A neder is a lie. The animal's not even here. That much a person's not going to do, because someone who's a kosher isn't accustomed to making nedarim. If you say kenidri rishayim nadar, then it is a neder. Ben nazir of a carbon, of a shvua, because rishayim do make nedarim. Okay. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmini, Amar Rav Yonasan, kol koyes, koil mini gehenim sholten boy. Anyone who gets angry, so all the different forms of gehenim he is basically upon him. Why? So the Ran says, "Lafi shakas mevilu lichvar beikar," that once you have anger, you're completely like kaifer beikar, and it's Ran says it's kaiver devotos kachavim, because you're so consumed by your own anger that you can't think outside of yourself, which is a form of avodah zarah. Shnemar v'haster kas mi libecha. You should remove anger from your heart. V'havir ra mivsarecha, and remove the evil from your flesh. The in ra el gehenim. Shnemar kol poal Hashem l'manehu. All the poali Hashem for his sake. V'gam rasha l'yoyim ra. And also the rasha on this bad day. That a person who is angry, his tachtainios, which means his afflictions, his stomach is going to get the best of him. Which it doesn't mean it's like some arbitrary punishment that God gives. It makes sense because if you're angry, you keep all this bottled inside, it causes a lot of pain in your stomach, it could cause ulcers. Ragos, the heart of an angry person. So what is something that causes all these problems and ailments with your eyes and also with your soul, which means inside of you? That we went to Eretz Yisrael is lavule train b'nei chuzoi b'hadei. He met two of the b'nei chuzoi along the way as he was traveling, as he was going up to Eretz Yisrael. So he encountered them b'hadei. So kamchad, one got up, shachti l'chavre, and shechted his friend, which sounds like he witnessed this guy getting killed. So Amalei Lula Yaos Abdi, did I do well? He said, did I do a good job killing him? So Amalei in, yes, Uparle Beisa Shchita. What does that mean? Says Rashi, V'nisyari loimerlo shlo asiyafa shema yiharguni. He said, oh yeah, like you did a great job. Like this is you shechted in the exact right place. And of course, that's not what he really meant. He just didn't want to get killed himself. So ki also commander of Yochanan Amalei Domachas V'Shalom. He felt bad that he said, "Oh yeah, go and you shechted him at the right place. You must be a great sheichet. Maybe I'm encouraging this guy to sin. You saved your own life. Because obviously the fact that he said this to you, he wasn't planning, it wasn't really being sincere. He was angry and he killed his friend because of it. So you saved your friend, you saved your own life. Kotamo Rabbi Yochanan, he said, he wondered, Michti. Sham Lev Ragos. So there was this anger, Bibavel Ksiv. But this pasuk is referring to in Bavel. In other words, he says, I don't understand, not in Eretz Yisrael. So how is it shaykh, says Rashi, al dahavi le'lahu bar chuzah, kas kol kach, how is it possible he got so angry, shahari l'chaver, he killed someone, how dahavi be'eretz Yisrael? L'chayr, this level of anger only should take place in Chutz La'aretz, not in Eretz Yisrael. So he said, at that moment, as we continue on Chapez Mepez, lo avrinan yardana, we did not cross the Yarden. It says Rashi, Adayin lo of Arenu as a Yarden, we didn't cross the Yarden, Kishiera oso maisa, and I saw this, lo havin betchum Eretz Yisrael. So we're actually not in the Tchum of Eretz Yisrael, because apparently, Tchum of Eretz Yisrael, we don't find people that are going to be so angry, and therefore, that must be the reason. So if you look in the Ran, Behech Gavar Kasa Shel Oisai Ben Mechozah Kol Kach Lo Harges Chaver. How could he have killed someone? You're in Israel, right? So he said, Lo Hahu Shaita Lo Avrin in Yardan. Avar HaYardin Lo Nis Kadesh. It wasn't sanctified. Lo Havasa HaOimer Ksis Kedushos. And therefore, because of the lack of Kedusha, that's where it was shaykh that someone would end up doing such a horrific act. Okay, so let's continue Chapez and Mabez. We have to keep going back to the Ram, which was on the previous Amud. So the Gemara says as follows: Omer Rabba Bar Rav Huna. So he says, Kol HaKayis, continue about being angry. Nafil Shechina Enu Chashuva Kenegdai. Even the Shechina, the divine presence, is not chashuv to him. Shenemar Rasha Kigoiva Apo, his height of anger, Bal Yidroish, Ein Elokim, Kol Mizim Moisav. He basically feels that there's no God. That's what happens when you're so angry, you can't think of anything. Says the Ran, Ein Elokim, so Shashchina Ein Chashuva Kenegdai. He doesn't care. Alma de Koyes Haviksil. Okay, so that's the problem. You completely shut everything out of your mind outside of this anger. You're completely consumed with anger. Shnemar, fine. Ein Elokim kol mezimoisav. Rav Yirmiyah medivni omer mishachech talmudai. You end up forgetting your learning. Umoisiv tipshus. And you end up increasing your foolishness. Shnemar kikas b'chek kesilim. Yanuach, that the anger is in the laps of those who are foolish. So it's a foolish thing to retain anger inside of you. You gain nothing, and all you do is get yourself sick. Uksil yifreis ivelas. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omer biadua shaboy noisa maruben b'suchayisav. It's clear that person must have more sins than mitzvos. There's no way this person could act this way without being a sinner. Shnemar mubal chema ra pasha amar of Ad Rabbi Chanina, and this is actually going to get to a question which I was waiting for, which is going to be on TA 27. So the question is, Yomoli chatu Yisrael elu svarim hatanach hayu noisin lehem. So let's see what it says here. Yomoli chatu Yisrael. If it weren't for the fact that they sinned or didn't sin, we would have only have received, exactly what this means is obviously needs a lot of work, we would have only received the Chumash and Sefer Yoshua, which perhaps what that means is that Sefer Yoshua is what brought us into Eretz Yisrael, which means that if we were not angry, then perhaps we would never have got to the level of being in Golus. Maybe Hashem would never, we would never have have to leave Eretz Yisrael. She'archa shel Eretz Yisrael hu, because again it shows the way of Eretz Yisrael. So my time, Akiba Rav Chachma Rav Kas, the more wisdom, the more anger. Okay, now what exactly does that mean? So let's just stop for a second because we're going to end up saying a new piece in a second. If you look at the last line in the Ran on the previous Omid, Barov Divrei Chachamois, the great amount of wisdom, Hanavim, Yesh Simin L'Rov Kas. It's a sign of anger, Shachisu Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so again, it's an interesting question in the way it's framed over here. Ilmoli Chatu Yisrael El Svarma Tanach Hayu Nisnim Lahem. So we would have given them again the Chumash and Sefer Yoshua. Okay, again that obviously needs a lot of work. What exactly does that Agana to mean? So perhaps, as I said, that may be one possible insight. Okay, but we see again the terrible, terrible trait of kas, a person who is angry. Okay, so the Gemara now continues with what we were talking about before. Rav Asi, Ein Niskokin Lokei Yisrael. Now, what is this referring to? That when it comes to a neder, says Rashi, Lahater lo nidro, to remove a neder, lefisha neder chamarhu, a neder is something which is so strict, so we're not going to remove it, chutz, except for mikainim ishti, nehenesli. If a person says that I'm making a neder against my wife, she gunves as kisi, because she stole money from me, or v'shekisa as b'ni, because she hit my child, and then v'naydishlo gunva v'shaloi hikasu, and it turned out that it wasn't the case. She never hit the child. She never stole anything from him. So in that situation, we are going to remove it, even though the neder was connected with Hashem's name. We'll still remove it because it's. We'll see the Ran why. So Char is a neder b'shoigeg because he only made the neder on false pretenses. So the Ran says, what do you mean? You don't even need shelos chacham by nidrei shoigeg. That's what we saw in the previous daf. So the Ran quotes the Rashba that it's possible the efshar the garsin le v'chi tanan b'masnisin etc. But Maimid Devarov, that we still want it to say to her, the Oimer Afal Pikein Bedaito Hayashalon Nehenu Mimenu Tihenu Mimenu Sark She'ela V'Hachaba Maimid Mairi. Here again, we're talking about where he still would want it, and also again we want that he should stay with her. The ikatarti kaimer shom beso va'od dahavi kein nidrish gagais. So he says, basically the reason why we're lenient over here is that because it's considered to be shom bias. So therefore, that's the reason why we're going to be lenient and allow, even though it's Lokei Yisrael, we're going to be mater. So again, the question the Ran asks, it's nidrish gagos, so you shouldn't need anything. So he said, no, you still need to do something because it's b'maimid. So, which basically, perhaps what the Ran is saying is that we don't want this person to just continue making the darim. So let's look at the Tosfos says, Umayri shehu emes shigan v'kisai. So he says that maybe Taka did steal it at the kid. The hash the boy hataras chacham the karmi de feel nishma v'kei yisrael niskokin lahatir mishum shom bias. So we'll still be matered either way. Okay, so even in other words, the girsa, the Ran of Rashba is that she actually did it. Okay, but nonetheless, we'll still remove it because of Shalom bias. So actually, let's look at question 4 before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Fine. Mehem hatarti l'kula dika begavna the kainim ishti the habli mishom hachim atirin. What are the two kulas? So we just saw this in the Ran. First of all, because of Shalom bias, and also it's ke'ein nidrish gagos. The suburb shigunva v'tah. He thought that she stole something and it was a mistake. So therefore, because of that, we'll remove it. Hahina stole committed Ravasi. Armalei b'mayne darta Belkei Yisrael. So I made a neder Belkei Yisrael with Hashem's name. Armalei ina darta b'moihi if you would make the neder b'moihi, which we said is a a language like Moshe, shehi kinoi ba'alma, that's just a kinoi, then mizdakikna, then we would be matir loch. V'hashta lo nedarte b'moihi, since you didn't use a kinoi, el belkei Yisrael lo mizdakikna loch. Since you used, again, Hashem's name, we're not going to do it. Says the Ran, the Sfir Rav Asi, the L'chatchila ein iskakin l'shvua. Okay. Rav Kahana ikli lebei Rav Yosef, Amar lei, lito marmidi, you want you to eat something, so Amar lei, lo. No. So he said, Mari Kula, which is the name of Hashem, lo te'im nalei, which is again, L'kei Yisrael. Amar lei, lo. Mari Kula, lo te'imt lei. So anichel Rav Kahana di Amar lo Mari Kula, El Rav Yosef, Amai Amar Lo Mari Kula. Hachi Karmerle. That's what he means. Lo Mari Kula Hu de Kamrit. Hilkach Lo Te'imtele. Therefore, I'm not going to taste. Amar Rav Nachman. Hilchasa. At the end of the day, the halach is Paischin b'charata. That you can, the chacham can be can open up with a charata, even without a pesach. V'niskakal L'kei Yisrael. Even if it has, even with Hashem's name, we'll still allow it. Mishtabach le Rav Nachman. So he was praising Rav Schayra, the Adam Gadol, who's a great man. Armelo Kishyavul Yadcha, when he comes to you, Haviyel Yadi, bring him to me, so I can meet this great guy. Havile Nidra le Mishra. So he made a neder. Also, he made Rav Nachman Armelo Nedarta Daita Dahachi. Did you make a neder based on this condition? Armelo in Daita Dahachi. In Kamazim. He said this Kamazimnin. He said this over and over. Ikbid Rav Nachman. Also, it started annoying Rav Nachman. Armelo Zil likalach, go to your room. Nafik Rav Schayro pasach piskla nashe. He ended up making a pesach for himself. So Rav Nachman was annoyed trying to find a pesach. So this actually worked. The fact that he was annoyed in itself was a pesach in itself. Rabbi Omer Ezu hi derech yishar shiavar lo adam. What is considered to be a proper path? Kol shi tiferes lo yiseha be tiferes lo min adam. So you have tiferes, that you're considered to be gracious in people's eyes. So Vahashtadik with Rav Nachman, since Rav Nachman was annoyed, Adaita Dahachi lo Nadri. I would have never made a neder had I known it would have annoyed him. V'shar Nashe, and he was matered. Rav Shimon Rabbi Habi Nidra LeMishra, also Kamed Rabbanan, Amalei, Nidarta Adaita Dahachi, Amalei, in Adaita Dahachi, in Kamazimnin. He kept saying yes many times. Chaf Gimel Manalv. Ba'avi mitzari Rabbanan. And this troubled the Rabbanan. And Rashi says, because they were going from the sun to the shade to the sun numerous times, and they didn't know of a Pesach. So Ba'avi mitzari Rabbanan, Mishimsha Latula Matula Shimsha. Let's read the parentheses. Lashon Acher Adaita Dahachi in Kamazimna Vamistar Rabban Mishimsha Latula Matula Shimsha. So Amalei Butnis Bere the Abashol Bar Butnis Mina Darta Daita the Mitzar Rabbanan Matula Shimsha Mishimsha Latula. Would you have actually have realized that you're causing so much sar to these Chachamim as they're trying to figure out a Pesach Amalei? So Amar Lo Vishar Yuha. So the fact that in itself caused pain, and that was something alone which would actually work. Look at the Ran up top. Pasuk Piskal Anashe. Lo Shiyater Rav Schayro Atzma Hakaimulon Liachal Devarahu Enu Nechel Elvashin Matza Pesach Shayachal Liyos Niterlo. He didn't actually matter himself, but he found a Pesach for himself. And that's how he was able to get it removed. Fine. Let's see. That was we did question 4. We're going to stop there. Question 5. Okay, we didn't do that. That's going to be in tomorrow's daf. Question TA27 we did. Let's see, what is this question? Question 28. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Chazanehu Ketzur Mechia, Amar Adaita the Chazal. Okay, we didn't do that. TB28. Kates and Mesiashi Divra Belezer Shamer in Iskokin Lokay Yisrael Im Kaimelon Kabes Hill Sheish Shvua. Okay, so this is straight Ran. So TB28. Beis Hillel be the Eved Amri yesh she'ela. Delo kibei shamed af diavad enu mutter. Rabbi Lezer chatchila omer de'en she'ela. L'soivrin Rabbi Lezer kivan shehizkar Hashem chomer tvei, Rabbi Shvu grade in the skokin lo kasha midi. Ad kan.